Check this.
Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and today I'm going to talk about a very weird idea that I've had, and it's kind of bothered me, and I kind of want to discuss it and maybe get some feedback and some help dealing with this problem. My family has been living in Canada for about 200 years. I consider myself to be Canadian, and I was thinking about what does that mean, and I was thinking about the fact that I live now in Toronto, and most of my friends are not white. Most of my friends are like multiracial. My wife is Asian. My children are biracial. And I was thinking about Canadian identity, and I was thinking about what does all this mean, where we're basically having a society now that is bringing in huge numbers of people from other countries. What does that mean to the makeup of Canada? And I was sort of thinking about this, and then I kind of was thinking about the situation of transgender people. Now, if you think about a transgender person, they are biologically a male, but they transition into becoming a female. And what happens is our society has become very tolerant of pretty much anything, and we let them transition into what society deems as a woman, even though biologically they're still a man. They might have all the looks of a female, based on surgeries and changes to their dress and behavior, but they're still biologically a man. And we've accepted that. So I think that's a little bit extreme, personally, because it's denying reality. But then you hear these stories where people want to go even further with that biological changing, that we can just define our biology whatever way we want. And they just say that they're transracial. So you'll see people saying, I saw one video where a man claimed to be a Filipino girl. And he was a white guy and basically defined himself. He identified as being a Filipino girl. So he's gone both biracial and not biracial, but transracial. And he's also gone to transgender. So to me, that's kind of extreme. Like, that's craziness. Like, how far can we go and just redefine what we are? And you hear other people they're redefining their age. They're saying, well, I want to identify as somebody much younger or older. So it's all craziness. And if our society is tolerant of this, where we're accepting of all these kind of identities, people identifying as something they truly aren't, because biology is kind of hard-coded. It's very limited in terms of the definitions that it provides. What's the consequence? So then I thought back to my original thoughts about what it is to be Canadian, and I do believe that there is a Canadian identity. There is an ethnic identity to Canadians. If you look back, maybe only 30 years ago, Canada was 95% white. It was white, European, mainly French and British ancestry. And that was the group of people that kind of formed Canada were of that ancestry. And they created the laws in Canada, they created the society, they created the buildings that we live in, they created the environment of Canada. And there's an identity there. There's a Canadian identity, a Canadian culture, like watching hockey or eating Tim Hortons or whatever. It's like Canadian culture. And what's happened is the government decided, hey, we don't have a Canadian identity anymore. We are just going to redefine it and say anyone in the world can become Canadian. Even though, biologically speaking, they might not have the same, they might not be the same. It's sort of like saying, if I wanted to say I was Japanese, well, you would probably say, oh, that's crazy, you're not Japanese, you're a white guy. And I'd be like, well, I identify as a Japanese, I know the culture, I'm well versed in it, I can speak a little bit of the language. And they would say, well, you're not Japanese, you're a white guy. But what if I got Japanese citizenship? Does that all fall through the wayside? What defines as somebody of that culture? And I do believe there's a biological reason. I think they would be right to say, hey, you're not Japanese. But why is it in Canada and United States and in European countries, we are so willing to give up that cultural identity and say that anyone that comes here can instantly become that new Canadian identity? What happens in my thought is the things that made this country what it is will be lost. It's just as extreme as somebody saying that they're transracial. And why is it that the government decides who is Canadian or not, and not the people themselves? There is a culture within these countries, and it's being lost because it's being replaced by people that are coming in to this country and bringing in their own cultures. Now, personally, I do enjoy other cultures, but I have this dilemma where I'm concerned. Where is Canada going? Will we lose what made us the great country, the country that people wanted to come to, if we keep on going down this road of bringing in huge numbers of people from other countries? And there's no reason that we have to bring in these people. The government says there's a reason, but there is really no reason to bring in people from other countries. They always say there's an economic reason. And the reason that they cite is, we're not having enough children. Well, tax us less and make it affordable for us to have children, and we'll have children. Or they'll say, you have to be concerned about the environment. That if we have too many people, then it's hard on the world, and it's our responsibility to have less children so that we can be better bastions of the environment, or caregivers of the environment. But at the same time, why is it that we're bringing in people from countries where they don't have those same values, and they're just breeding and having lots and lots of children? If that's the case, if we really want to keep control over the number of people in the world and be good caretakers of the earth, then shouldn't we do everything we can to discourage people to come into our country, encourage them to deal with their own population growth, and therefore, once they hit that kind of too many people in their own country, then they'll actually stop having children because they'll be overpopulated. But if we keep on bringing them in, they have no incentive to do that. So the question is, why are we bringing these people in? And I have nothing against these people. Actually, as I said, most of my friends are people of non-Canadian backgrounds. So it's a dilemma for me, because I see that I see how Canada is changing. And I'm not sure if it's for the best, because I see now enclaves forming where it's like all like one group. It's like, you have Chinatown, you have Jamaica Town, you have all these like little groups, and they don't intermix. There's no sense of community anymore. And I see that there's a real loss to the Canadian identity. And I think once we lose that Canadian identity, we will lose what makes us great. So I really need your help on this one. Give me your feedback. Give me your insights. What do you think? Is it any more crazy to say somebody is transracial as to say that somebody is just instantly Canadian just because they get a citizenship here. So just a food for thought. I'd love to hear your feedback. And this has been Socially Triggered. Bye.
Check this.